Hello again, true crimeers. You're seeing my face a lot right now. I'm going crazy. Here's another compilation video. The first 13 or 14 videos I think are themed. They're like internet related deaths or like catfishing or just dating related in some capacity. And then the remainder of the videos, I said, I'll throw on some unsolved mysteries because that playlist I have on TikTok is so massive. So you're the back half of the video is gonna be just nothing but no closure and unsolved murders. So enjoy. Without further ado, here's 25 or something more stories. Viewer discretion is advised. Yeah. The internet is a very scary place, especially for children. Hello, true crimeers. This is the case of Ashley Hall. Viewer discretion is advised. Ashley was a 17-year-old girl who lived in Darlington, which is in the United Kingdom. She was actually in college at this point, and she was going to work in childcare, something that she was very passionate about. Ashley did have some issues with self-esteem, but she didn't really let that get her down too much. She was interested in at some point finding love, and she turned to Facebook for that. One day in 2009, someone reached out to Ashley through Facebook. It's super blurry, obviously, but this is the image that he used as his profile picture, and he claimed that he was a 16-year-old boy in her area. The two of them went back and forth, they talked for a bit, everything seemed normal, and then by October 25th, 2009, they had arranged to finally meet. So on that day, she had gone to a destination where they agreed to, meet up. And when she got there, she got a text message from this boy she's been talking to. And they said, well, my father is going to pick you up and then he'll bring you to me. Please pass no judgment on this 17-year-old girl. This was 2009. This was kind of right around the beginning of the catfishing era, unfortunately. And this person she was talking to was very convincing. Ashley had told her mom that she was going to go meet a friend of hers. She did not tell her about meeting this boy. But then Ashley never came home. The very next day, this man, a poor man's Moby wannabe, his name was Peter Chapman, well, he was brought into custody because he failed to comply with orders he was given because he was on the sex register list. And as they were talking to him, he just came out with it. He said he kidnapped, sexually assaulted, and murdered Ashley Hall the night before. The family barely even knew she was missing when this happened. He was a 33-year-old man posing as a 16-year-old boy with the purpose of luring a teenage girl for unsavory things. He told police where they could find her, and lo and behold, she was there. He just dumped her in a field. A lot of problems came from this because police really did not keep good tabs on this guy, and especially not on his internet activity as a registered sex offender. Well, he was convicted, and he was given a minimum sentence of 35 years. Never meet a stranger in private. Police in South Africa would find their victim's face in a freezer. Hello, true crimeers. This is the case of Michael van Heck. Viewer discretion is advised. Michael lived in the city of Welkom, which is in South Africa. Michael worked as an electrician. He was described as a really happy guy, an adventurous person who just loved life. His friends and family would say that he just brought them so much incredible joy. In 2011, Michael was just looking for love. So he did what a lot of us do, joined a dating site. And that is where he met 20-year-old Shanae Van Herden. They had conversations, everything was going good, they were flirting back and forth, and finally, Michael was ready to meet her. And in a kind of unusual first date scenario, they planned to meet at a graveyard. And on the night of April 2nd, 2011, Michael Van Eck went to the graveyard to meet her. And then he was never seen alive again. When Michael didn't show up for work the next morning, when his mother couldn't get a hold of him, they reported him as missing. Now, the family knew that he was going to a graveyard to meet this girl, so that is where they went with police. That is when they found a large pool of blood and what appeared to be a t-shirt covered in blood. And then they noticed a shallow grave. And they found parts of Michael Van Eck, but not all of him. Michael was missing his head, his right arm, and his left foot. So police would do some digital investigating to see about this date. And it led to the apartment of Shanae van Herden and her 24-year-old boyfriend, Martens van der Merwe. He was a high school dropout who had been diagnosed as schizophrenic earlier in his life. She had an interest in voodoo, and he had an interest in darker occult stuff. They were two peas in a pod. She wanted to practice stitching people's mouths shut, but she didn't want to do it to her boyfriend. They both had fantasies of murder, but obviously they didn't want to do it to each other, so they would lure an unsuspecting person to kill, to fulfill this dark urge of theirs. Sadly, Michael just happened to be that random person. He was lured to the cemetery where the two of them were waiting for him. Martens would sneak up behind him and just begin stabbing him, and then Shanae would start stabbing him in the front. They then proceeded to dismember him, because they also fantasized about that, left parts of him in the graveyard. Shanae then cut his face off and stitched his mouth shut and stored it in the freezer. The rest of his body, his head and whatnot, was found in a garden in their apartment. They were obviously both arrested and charged with murder. Martens got 25 years to life. Shanae got 20 years to life. God, people are sick. When exploring the world of online dating, you should always be careful, because you never truly know who's on the other side. Hello, true crimerers. This is the case of Adam Hilarie. Viewer discretion is advised. Adam was a 27-year-old father from Auburndale, Florida. His family described him as a completely selfless and very caring, loving individual. He loved boxing, he loved amateur martial arts, but most of all, and most importantly, he was described as a father who would do anything for his baby girl. He adored his 5-year-old daughter to the ends of the earth. But sadly, she has to grow up now without a father. After a recent breakup, Adam decided to sign up on the dating app Plenty of Fish. It's a very popular dating app, of course. I've never personally used it, but you know. Now, almost instantly, he made a connection with someone. 18-year-old Haley Bustos. The two of them hit it off really quickly and decided to meet up the night they started talking. They allegedly had a wonderful time and they ended up going back to Adam's apartment. It turns out Haley wasn't going to his apartment for, fun. She was going there to scope the place out. Yeah. The following morning, she would return to Adam's apartment, but this time she brought friends, including this man, Andre Warner. The three men entered the apartment while, allegedly, according to her, Haley stayed outside in the car. That's never actually been proven if she was in the car or if she was in the apartment. Now, they would steal quite a bit of stuff, but obviously Adam was there. So Andre pulled a gun on him. And according to the three men, Adam fell to his knees and begged for his life. Adam would say, "For the sake of my 5-year-old daughter, who I love, please do not kill me." But Andre shot him anyway. Shot him dead. And then the four sped off, leaving it up to Adam's family to find his dead body. Shortly after the murder and robbery, in August of 2016, and by the way, this happened in early August 2016, Haley was picked up on another robbery charge. And I can't find the connection to how it happened, but she would end up telling the story about what happened to Adam. And she threw everyone else under the bus as well. So they would all be charged with his murder plus a slew of other charges. Andre was convicted, and the jury recommended the death penalty. Haley would take a plea deal and testify against Andre, so she only got 25 years. Unfortunately, I don't know the information about these two guys. Hello, true crimerers. This is the case known as the Twitter Killer. Viewer discretion? Hey, it's advised. Pictured behind me here is Takahiro Shiraishi. I don't know if I said that right. He was born on October 9th, 1990. A young pup. Before this case, he lived in Kabukicho, which is a red district in Tokyo. He was actually a scout, to help lure women to brothels, in order to have them work in the sex trade. What a guy! He then moved to an apartment in Zama, which is in central Kanagawa. I think I'm starting to like saying fancy names. This would turn out to be the hotspot for his, well, we're not baking cookies, this is a true crime account. This will be the site of his brutal murders. So, what would he do? He would go onto Twitter, and I obviously have no idea what any of that says. Trigger warning, by the way, we're going to talk about self-harm for a brief second. So what he would do is he would lure people who were having suicidal thoughts. Because this sick SOB, he found that they were the most easily manipulated people. Their guard was already down, so it would be easier for him to have his way with them. So, he would lure them to his apartment, he would sexually assault them, and then he would just murder them. So between the months of August and October of 2017, he would lure 8 women, 3 of them being high school girls, and 1 man, to his apartment. The youngest was 15 years old and the oldest was 26. When he was done murdering them, he would do what so many serial killers have done. He would dismember them, store them in bins and boxes. His neighbors would begin to report a very foul smell coming from his apartment. So, how did he get caught? Well, one of the women he lured, her brother, he decided to play detective and look for her because she was missing. So what he ended up doing with the help of someone else is they set up a fake Twitter account because that's what he noticed his sister had done. But this is going to be a fake one, of course. They got a date set up with him and they actually got the police involved, obviously without him knowing. From what I've been able to read, when the police got there and they asked him where this woman was, he just caved in and said, she's in the freezer. I killed her and I chopped her up and she's in the freezer. Searching the apartment, they would just find body parts just in boxes throughout the apartment. And he just confessed. I killed a whole bunch of people. 9 people, to be exact. It turns out he was borderline suicidal himself. He was arrested and pled guilty to all 9 murders. He was sentenced to death. And he said, I'll never appeal the sentence. He's imprisoned in Tokyo, awaiting execution. Hello, true crimerers. This is the case of Philip Markoff, also known as the Craigslist Killer. Philip was born on February 12, 1986 in Sherrill, New York. By 2009, he was a second-year med student, and he was set to marry his longtime girlfriend, Megan McAllister. Their wedding was set for August 14th, 2009. But it wouldn't happen. You want to tell him, Philip, or should I? I'll do it, because you really can't do it. This is Tricia Leffler, and she was an escort. She offered her services on Craigslist, and Philip would engage in those services. Already off to a great start, Phil. They would meet at Weston Copley Place in Boston, Massachusetts. But Philip wouldn't be getting escorted. Nope. He robbed Tricia Leffler at gunpoint after he bound and gagged her. And then he moved on, left her be. On April 16th, 2009, at a Holiday Express in Warwick, Rhode Island, an exotic dancer by the name of Cynthia Melton, she was offering lap dance services on Craigslist. And who do you think responded to that? The only one woman for me kind of guy, Philip Markoff. Philip attempted to rob her, but he didn't succeed. Rewinding 2 days to April 14th, 2009, at the Copley Marriott in Boston, Julissa Brisman advertised a masseuse service on Craigslist. Unfortunately for her, her ad got a response from none other than Philip Markoff. Sadly, after their meetup, she would be discovered unconscious in the hotel room. She was pronounced dead because she had been shot multiple times. Philip then ran off to Rhode Island to do the attempted robbery while police were investigating this crime. They were able to trace the email responses to Jalissa to Philip. They also used his cell phone activity, and most importantly, these CCTV photos from the Copley Marriott. So he was arrested and charged with attempted robbery, and homicide. His fiancée, Megan McAllister, would say that he was beautiful inside and out and that she could swear that he was definitely innocent. But on April 29th, she went to his jail cell and called off their wedding. June 1st, she went back to his jail cell and said, "I'm never going to see you again." I guess he's not so innocent then. On August 15th, 2010, Philip Markoff took the coward's way out, and he used a makeshift knife to end his own life. Oh well.
Hello, true crimerers. This is a case that takes place on the dark web. Oh shit, I'm supposed to hide my identity. Hello, you're not supposed to see my identity, so forget you saw me. How about this? Now you can barely see me. This is 37-year-old Kelly Harper, and she is from Columbus, Wisconsin. In January of 2021, a group of journalists were investigating a website on the dark web that people could use to hire hits. Are you like Dark Timeline Kermit the Frog or what? You have no face, sir. Anyway, this investigation by journalists would uncover, well, just what they were looking for, a hired hit. You see, Kelly Harper here, ham up your nose. Ooh, yikes, you do a lot of drugs, man. Oof. They found correspondences between her and an unknown dark web man with a question mark for a face. Whoa, are we in the Matrix right now, or what? What if I took both pills? Oh, shit. Now, I do not know if the man she contacted with has been caught, but Kelly Harper wanted to take someone out. Who was that? You have any guesses? Sir? Sir? Ma'am? What are you? Do you have any questions for me? You see, she had recently gone through a divorce, so she was looking to whack her ex-husband. How did she pay? And yes, she did transfer the money. Well, she used Bitcoin. Her Bitcoin profile is essentially what led the authorities to her. She described the person that she wanted to have killed as a white 5'5" male, dark short hair, blue eyes, who weighs 165 pounds. How much was his life worth to her? $5,633.87. That is a very specific amount. At least round it up to an even amount. Donate that last 13 cents to Children's Hospital like Panda Express does. Now, in February 2021, she would initially plead not guilty. But then, when she realized she could get up to 10 years in federal prison, she would eventually, on June 11th, 2021, plead guilty to this crime, in which her sentence was 6 years in prison, and then she would get 3 more years of supervised release. Maybe then, ma'am, you could use some of that Bitcoin to buy yourself some eyebrows. And by the way, the crime she would plead to was solicitation to commit murder. I feel like I'm in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. What's going on, man? You come here often, or? Oh, yuck, Pete, I'm getting out of here, okay.
Hello, true crimerers. Let's do another case from the dark web, shall we? And this time we're going to Germany. So this is the case of Marcus Hesse. Viewer discretion is advised. And this case takes us to Herne, Germany. I think I said that right. At the time of this story, Marcus was a 19-year-old and he was described as a social outcast. He was withdrawn from the world. He was also unemployed and living with his folks. He was recently declined by the Bundeswehr, which was the German army. He did not like that, so he tried to unalive himself not once, but twice, and couldn't go through with it or failed. So then, he did the next best thing according to his warped mind. In March of 2017, while living in this apartment complex, Marcus would lure one of his neighbors to the basement of this building. That neighbor was a 9-year-old boy named Jaden. When they got down to the basement, Marcus just began to stab him. And he did so 56 times. Marcus would then take photos and also videos of the young boy's body, posing with it in various ways, and then he fled the apartment building. Marcus hid in the woods for a little bit, but then he went to the house of a friend. This man, 22-year-old Christopher W. I don't know his last name, unfortunately. His friend would find out what Marcus did to the little boy, and so Marcus said, whoops, and then he killed his friend by stabbing him 68 times. Again, taking photos and videos, posing with the body. Marcus would first go on the app WhatsApp to share the photos, and then he started posting videos and photos to the dark web, including pictures of himself holding the murder weapon in his hand with blood all over it. He would write on a dark web message board, "I know now that people die slowly when you slaughter them." He also would say, "I just killed a neighbor's child, and I don't feel bad, to be honest." And then he said, "I meant to lure a girl in here so I could sexually assault her." Marcus was on the run for about 4 days. He would then go into a Greek restaurant in this exact outfit with an umbrella and a sack of onions. What? And then he just calmly said, "I'm the man they're looking for." And then he was arrested. The 9-year-old boy's father, unfortunately, was the one to discover his dead son laying in what he said was a lake of blood. Why did he do it? He said it was because he was angry he was turned down by the German army. Or maybe because he's just sick. He was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. Oh well. Blood drops on the ground and all the white linens. DNA left behind is 1 in a billion. These are a few things from every crime scene. Hello, true crimeers! It's time for another Christmas murder story. And this is the tragic case of Katie Locke. Viewer discretion is advised. Katie was a 23-year-old school teacher from Buckhurst Hill in Essex, in England. And on December 23rd, 2015, using the dating app Plenty of Fish, she had planned a dinner date with this man, Carl Langdell. And they met at a pub in East London and had some drinks. Allegedly, they were having a good time and both got relatively intoxicated. They then would go to the Theobald's Park Hotel in Chestnut. Employees there would say that both appear to have been a little on the drunk side, but Katie was kind of propping up Carl as they were walking down the hall. The pair would get to the hotel and into their room sometime around 3:30 in the morning. 30 minutes later, Katie would call the front desk and ask for 2 toothbrushes. 2 hours after that, a guest in the hotel notices that there is a wire hanger sticking in the emergency exit door. Langdell then called the front desk and asked for a late checkout and then put a do not disturb sign on the handle. When the room was finally empty, staff went in there to notice all of the bedding was gone. The towels were gone and the lock on the window was broken. Katie was nowhere to be found. Her family grew worried. And then Carl Langdell would call one of his friends and admit he murdered Katie Locke. He said that he strangled her until she was dead and then sexually assaulted her corpse. Then, using one of the hotel's luggage trolleys, he loaded her onto that to bring her to a bin where he dumped her like garbage. He was brought in for questioning where he confessed. He told them where they could find her body and they found it. Now, Carl would be convicted of her murder and sentenced to 26 years to life. Here's why none of this ever should have happened. You see, 3 weeks prior to this murder, he was given a suspended prison sentence for threatening to kill 2 different women. In the 9 months prior to the murder, he was in contact with 5 different institutions. You see, Carl here was, mentally unstable for most of his life. In and out of mental institutions. He even told a psychiatrist that he had a fantasy about murdering a woman and then having his way with her after she was dead. Now, to be fair, these different institutions, none of them knew the full story. And the judge involved in this situation that happened 3 weeks prior to him threatening women, he didn't know the full story as well. But somewhere along the line, he was failed, which means Katie was failed. He ended his own life this year. Here at the beautiful Horseshoe Bay in South Australia, a catfishing scheme would end in a nightmare. Hello, true crimerers. This is the case of Carly Ryan. Viewer discretion is advised. Carly was born on January 31st, 1992, to a single mother. Her name is Sonia Ryan, and they would eventually settle down in Stirling, South Australia. Carly would eventually become fascinated with the emo scene in her early teenage years. She even had an online account on a website called vampirefreaks.com. And in 2006, she also had an account on MySpace. And in 2006, Carly began speaking to an 18-year-old boy named Brandon on MySpace. His online name was Corrupt Koala. He also lived in Australia. He claimed to be a musician, and they apparently fell in love online. This little friendship or relationship lasted about a year, when in 2007, a grown adult claimed to be the father of Brandon, and he said his name was Shane. Brandon, for some reason, couldn't join him, but Brandon had purchased some gifts for Carly's upcoming birthday. So Shane decided, hey, I'll go drop off these gifts to her. Shane asked Carly's mom if he could just stay for the birthday party, and she said that's fine. She even allowed him to stay the night in the living room that night. But she noticed some very strange things pretty quickly at the birthday party. Shane was getting a little too close to Carly, a little creepy. And then, the next morning, Sonia walks into Carly's room, and this man, yeah, that's the face I'm using, was in bed with Carly. Sonia was like, get out, get the fuck out, go. So he did, and then she began monitoring Carly's internet usage really closely. On February 19th, 2006, Carly told her mom she was going to go hang out with some friends. As a matter of fact, it was going to be a sleepover, and of course her mother said that's fine. Carly never got home the following day, and it wasn't long until they found out why. That same morning, the body of Carly Ryan was found floating face down here in Horseshoe Bay in South Australia. She had 19 injuries to her body. There were signs of suffocation and also drowning. Carly was lured to the beach by waste of human skin Gary Newman. His name was not Shane. He was also the 18-year-old Brandon on MySpace. Brandon didn't exist. They found out he had over 200 online personalities. He was arrested and put on trial. He was convicted and was sentenced to 29 years to life. And Carly's mom began the Carly Ryan Foundation. Hello, true crimerers. This is the case of Alicia DeBolt. Viewer discretion is advised. Alicia was a 14-year-old girl living with her family in Great Bend, Kansas. She was described as a pretty normal teenage girl. She had a good amount of friends. She got along with her family. She was a cheerleader at Great Bend High School. She was a competitive gymnast. And people just said that Alicia was a vibrant, loving, caring, just a really well-behaved, great kid. In July of 2010, she would meet this man, 36-year-old Adam Longoria. They met at a birthday party where they had, mutual connections there. He flirted with this 14-year-old girl and even got her phone number at this party. He wanted to make sure that she got home safely so she could text him when she did. He also lied about his age. At the time, he said he was 25. This grown adult man would continue texting her, asking about wanting to hang out, and he tried repeatedly to get her to come out to his car. Now, at the same time, he actually has a girlfriend. Her name is Eva Brown. And it should also be noted that Alicia repeatedly told Adam Longoria, we're just friends, I want to be only friends with you. But Adam remained persistent. On August 21st, 2010, Adam and Alicia would exchange text messages. At one point, she gave Adam her street address. He told her, there is a party going on tonight. Do you want to come with me? And she said, yeah. So she got ready for this party. She waited for Adam to get there, and she got into his car. He told her that her friends were at the party and they were all drinking alcohol. It's gonna be fun. Alicia was never seen alive again. Her family reported her missing, of course, and they would find her 4 days later. She was found here, dumped at an asphalt plant. The workers said they found what looked like a burnt mannequin, but it wasn't a mannequin. It was the charred body of 14-year-old Alicia DeBolt. Police began their investigation into the murder, and they found hundreds of text messages exchanged between Adam and Alicia. Now, Alicia's body had gasoline poured over it. They found that same gasoline on the shoes of Adam Longoria, and they have this footage of him purchasing the gas. Adam's girlfriend would say that he reeked of gasoline that night. Adam tried to flee, but he was caught. They know that he sexually assaulted her, but they could not determine her actual cause of death. He was convicted of her murder and got life without parole. Hello, true crimeers. This is going to be a catfishing story that led to a murder. And this is the story of Cynthia Hoffman. Viewer discretion is advised. Cynthia lived in the outskirts of Anchorage, Alaska. The family of the 19-year-old said that she had some developmental disabilities. They said she had the mindset of someone who would be like in the 7th grade, but obviously could still function in life, and she was doing great. And she would get caught up in, I don't even know how to describe it. This is 18-year-old Denali Bremer, supposedly the best friend of Cynthia Hoffman. Well, that's what Cynthia thought. Well, one day, Denali got a message online from this random unknown man by the name of Tyler. That's what he went by. He claimed he was this big millionaire and he wanted to spend it on something. So I believe Denali was a random target. But the something he wanted to buy with his money, it was murder. Murder and sexual assault. He would offer Denali $9 million to kill someone in Anchorage, Alaska. And Denali said, okay, let's do it. So together they picked Cynthia Hoffman. The plan was that Denali was supposed to murder Cynthia and take videos and pictures of the murder and also of the aftermath. And I would love to say right now that they all got caught before any of this happened, but that would be a lie. Denali recruited several of her friends to help, and throughout the course of about a month, they planned the murder. They were all promised millions of dollars. On June 2nd, 2019, they lured Cynthia under the guise that they were going to go for a hike. And this was near the Eklutna River. 5 teenagers were there. They would bind Cynthia up, put duct tape over her mouth. Denali has her phone out and she's taking Snapchats and sending them to this man, Tyler. And then 16-year-old Caden McIntosh with a 9mm put a bullet in the back of Cynthia's head, killing her. Her body was found a few days later. Through cyber investigation, police uncovered that Tyler is actually 21-year-old Darren Schillmiller from New Salisbury, Indiana. There was no money. This was just like a sick game for him. What was his motive? It's really unknown. Police suspect it has something to do with child pornography. He was arrested and extradited to Alaska, and he is actually still awaiting trial. All of the teens involved were charged with murder, and they're all still awaiting trial as well. Please be mindful. 2 strangers would meet through the app Kik. One of them would end up deceased. Hello, true crimeers. This is the case of Ashley Pegram. Viewer discretion is advised. Ashley was born in South Carolina in 1986. By 2015, she is a 28-year-old mother of 3 children. She was described as a very caring, very loving mother, a loving person in general. She loved being outdoors and hiking and that sort of thing. Sometime in 2015, while using the Kik app, she would meet a gentleman by the name of Edward Bonilla. The two of them chatted, and then eventually they planned a date. She left her house in Summerville, South Carolina sometime around 9 p.m. on April 3rd, 2015. And sadly, she would never come home. The following day, her family reported her missing. They would relatively quickly find out that she had been in contact with a man named Edward Bonilla, and that he was likely the last person to see her. So her family let authorities know and gave them all of the text message information. You see, at about 3:29 a.m. on the morning of April 4th, he sent a text message to Ashley's phone apologizing for leaving her on the side of the road because she had gotten too drunk. So, of course, police questioned him. He claimed on the night of April 3rd he dropped her off at a gas station, and CCTV footage confirmed that. He then said he left, but that isn't true. They found footage that she actually got back into his vehicle. Now, Edward worked at a flooring company. Police found out that Edward took one of the company trucks, this one right here, sometime on April 3rd, possibly April 4th, and returned it at 10:55 p.m. on April 4th. Investigating the truck, they found traces of blood, and that blood would match Ashley Pegram. They also found traces of Ashley's blood inside the trunk of the vehicle that he was driving the night of the date. So, Edward Bonilla was arrested for the murder. At his trial, he would claim that her death was an accident. He dropped her off at the gas station because she was so drunk, and then he backed his truck up, which then hit her. He got out of the truck to console her, and then she started freaking out, so he bear hugged her until she just died. Okay, Edward, no. He led authorities to Ashley's body, and she had broken neck bones, which actually indicated that she was strangled to death. And she had blunt force trauma to her head. She was also found with just her bra on and nothing else. Sorry, Eddie, you're a liar. In August of 2016, Edward Bonilla was convicted of murder, and he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. My advice, anytime you meet someone on an app, a stranger, tell multiple people where you're going and who you're going with. Give addresses, show pictures, whatever it takes. Be very careful about accepting friend requests from strangers online because you never know who exactly you're talking to. Hello, true crimeers. This is the case of Cody Virg. Viewer discretion is advised. 25-year-old Cody was a correctional officer in Eloy, Arizona, and he actually did so with his girlfriend, Natalie. Now, allegedly, they had a pretty decent relationship. They loved each other dearly, and they were almost never apart from each other. But at some point, Cody got a friend request from a girl named Paige Woods on Facebook. He didn't know her, but he saw there was mutual friends between he and her, so he accepted her friend request. Cody and Paige, they exchanged messages over the course of a few weeks, and then Paige, she suggested that they meet. And Cody, well, he said yes. There was going to be a bonfire, according to Paige, in Arizona City. Cody left his home on January 30th, 2017, sometime around 9:30 p.m., and he told some family that he was going to this bonfire. But that was the last time they would ever see Cody. When he didn't show up for work the next day, he was immediately reported missing. His vehicle was found the next day, but Cody was nowhere in sight. No one could get a hold of him. He just seemed to vanish. Police began investigating this so-called Paige through their interactions with Facebook. You see, she had actually deleted her profile very quickly, but they were still able to trace it back to who started the account. And that led them to 26-year-old William Randolph. There was a connection between he and Cody, and that was Cody's girlfriend, Natalie. You see, Natalie was the ex-wife of William Randolph. Now, it's been confirmed Natalie was at work during the time he went missing, but police decided to arrest William Randolph. They then searched William's truck and also his place of work, where they found blood and they found a gun. A few days after they arrested William, they would find the charred remains of Cody Virg in a desolate area near Arizona City. He was found in this exact location. He had been shot through the head. William, he would admit to creating the fake Facebook profile, and he admitted to luring Cody out. But then he claims that he had nothing to do with his murder. But he hasn't said who is. Police obviously weren't buying it, and they would eventually charge him with capital murder, and they are seeking the death penalty for him. Now, even though he was arrested way back in 2017, his trial has still yet to begin. I am not sure why there has been so many delays, with the exception of COVID eventually pushing everything back, but I don't know why he didn't get a trial before COVID ever happened. But that is all I have and know at this point. No clue if she's involved. Hello, true crimeers. This is the case of the Doodler. Yeah, the Doodler. Viewer discretion is advised. San Francisco's Ocean Beach, January 27th, 1974, 1:57 a.m. The body of a 49-year-old man by the name of Gerald Kavanaugh is found. He was riddled with stab wounds, including one on his hand, so he tried to defend himself. His body was already in rigor mortis. This was victim number 1. Pictured here is San Francisco's Castro district. This is an area of San Francisco where there's a high population of LGBTQ citizens. Their story of a man that they describe as the Doodler, a man who would paint a caricature of you after you've left a bar. At least 5 gay men would come in contact with the Doodler after leaving a bar, and then after being alone with him, would end up dead. June 25th, 1974, victim number 2, 27-year-old Joseph Stevens, who would go by J, J-A-E. He had left the cabaret club where he normally performed, and he was last seen alive on June 24th, 1974. Then the next day, on the shores of Spreckles Lake, which is located in Golden Gate Park, the body of J. Stevens would be found, stabbed 3 times. The gay community of the Castro district was now beginning to panic. July 7th, 1974. A 31-year-old German man by the name of Klaus Christmann. He was found at the foot of Lincoln Way near a beach. Klaus had last been seen leaving a bar called Bojangles. He had 3 cuts across his throat and then was stabbed 15 times. At this point, police know they have a serial killer, and Klaus was victim number 3. The suspect, the Doodler. This is a composite drawing based on eyewitness testimony of the man who would draw gay patrons leaving bars and then leaving with certain people. And those certain people end up dead. May 12, 1975, almost a year later, 32-year-old Frederick Elmer Kappen, stabbed multiple times in the heart. June 4th, 1975, 66-year-old Harold Goldberg. His body had actually been where it was for at least 2 weeks. The Doodler was described as a black male between the age of 19 and 22, about 5'10" to 6 foot tall, and a very slim build. Police say he was a quiet and very serious person, super intelligent, and an excellent artist. This is an updated composite drawing of what he would look like today. He would be at least 65 years old. He's still never been caught. Do you know this man? Hello, true crimeers. This is the bonkers case of Chandra Levy. Viewer discretion is advised. Chandra grew up in Northern California, and she was described as a spunky little person. Her family would describe her as silly and bossy, and just a fun person to be around. Chandra had aspirations to work in the FBI, and in the year 2000, she would take a step towards that goal. She moved to Washington, D.C., where she would intern at the Bureau of Prisons. I guess that was all part of her master's program. She was studying at the University of Southern California. Now, in her travels in D.C., Chandra would meet a congressman, California Congressman Gary Condit. At that point in time, Gary had already been married for 28 years, and from 1972 to 2000, he was undefeated. He would always get reelected. And eventually it would come out that he was having an affair with Chandra Levy. The last time anyone would ever see Chandra was May 1st, 2001. And then 5 days later, her parents would report her missing because they hadn't heard a single thing from their daughter. Her parents would immediately tell DC police about the affair with the congressman. thinking maybe he had something to do with her disappearance. When investigators got into her apartment, they noticed that it looked like she was in the middle of packing. They also found her ID, her credit cards, her cell phone, her purse. They conducted a search on her computer and they noticed that she had searched for a park, specifically Rock Creek Park. So naturally, police investigated that area, but they uncovered nothing at the time. And then, a little over a year after she disappeared, a man walking his dog at Rock Creek Park would find skeletal remains. The remains were confirmed to be those of Chandra Levy. Her cause of death was not revealed, other than it was a homicide. They found one of her shoes, a shirt, jogging pants that for some reason were tied off on the bottom, her Walkman, but there was no DNA, there was no hair samples, there was virtually nothing there to tie this to anyone. The congressman was questioned a lot. While he wasn't forthcoming about the affair, the FBI does believe that he had no involvement with her disappearance or her murder. A man by the name of Ingmar Guandik came onto police's radar. He had assaulted 2 other women in that park before. He did not kill them, he assaulted them. Crimes he was eventually sentenced to 10 years in prison for. He denied killing Levy though, but he did fail a polygraph test. He would be convicted of her murder in 2010, but then his conviction was overturned. For these reasons, by the way. And now it's back to being unsolved. This man would leave this bowling alley with 3 bodies in his wake. Hello, true crimerers. This is the case of the AMF Broadway Lanes shooting. Viewer discretion is advised. On the night of January 27th, 2002, 2 bowling alley employees, Aaron Gola and James Springer, were closing down the bowling alley for the night. This was the AMF Broadway Lanes in Littleton, Colorado. With them that night was a friend of theirs and someone who worked at a different bowling alley, Robert Zodiac. At approximately 11:40 p.m., Aaron would call her friend to come pick her up, which is something that they normally did. Very shortly after that phone call was made, sometime around 11:50 p.m., witnesses claimed they saw this man running out of the bowling alley. He was described as a middle-aged white man with a bald head. He was wearing a knee-length trench coat. He would then get into a newer model, dark color pickup truck, and then he drove south. And unfortunately, that's really all they know about him. And then just 5 minutes later at 11:55 p.m., Aaron's friend got to the bowling alley. When they walked in to get their friend, they saw the remains of 3 people. All 3 victims had been shot to death. Now, this obviously happened in a very short amount of time, because at 11:40, you have Aaron making a normal phone call to her friend to come pick her up. 15 minutes later, she's discovered dead. Now, the Littleton Police Department would also release information that a week prior to this, there was an attempted burglary of this same bowling alley. I don't know much of the details, however, about how that happened. And sadly, that's all there is. This case is still unsolved. Now we're here 19 years later. But as of April of this very year, the Littleton Police Department have announced they are offering a $30,000 reward for any information that helps lead to the capture of the murderer. They also announced that they are now going to be utilizing the genealogy testing that's been used successfully recently on certain items that were collected at the time of the murder that had unknown DNA on it. And remember, with these genealogy tests, they just have to link it to a family member of the killers, and then they could trace it to the actual killer. But in the meantime, if you are in Littleton, Colorado, and you know who this man is, please call Crime Stoppers at 720-913-7867. Somebody knows who this man is. You can report anonymously. Help their families. A train in Arkansas is quickly approaching 2 teenage boys laying across the tracks. Would the train stop in time? Hello, true crimerers. This is the case known as Boys on the Tracks. Viewer discretion is advised. In the early morning hours of August 23, 1987, near Little Rock, Arkansas, a freight train was approaching. Workers would then notice about 300 feet ahead, two bodies laying across the train tracks. They appeared to be partially covered in some sort of tarp. The freight train, despite trying to stop, was unable to, and they ran over both boys. They were allegedly dragged about 1 mile down the tracks. The tarp that the people on the train claimed they saw was never actually found, but that could have very easily just gotten caught up and ripped to shreds. The two boys were identified as 16-year-old Don Henry and 17-year-old Kevin Ives. They were last seen leaving their homes around midnight on that same day. When their autopsy was conducted, the coroner would say that they likely were incapacitated due to marijuana and possibly alcohol. He would rule that their deaths were a self-unaliving, or I guess an accidental self-unaliving is what he's trying to say. Like, they didn't mean to do it, but it happened. Now, the parents were not at all on board with that scenario. They knew their child better than that. So, in March of 1988, they got a second opinion. Now, the second autopsy of the two boys would show there really wasn't that high amount of marijuana in their system. The original coroner said 20 cigarettes. Cigaweeds. This new coroner is saying no, maybe one, possibly two. One of the boys' shirts had a very obvious stab wound in it, and that would be on the back of his shirt. Next to the boys, they did find a rifle and a flashlight. Initially, they said, oh, they were probably just out hunting deer and, I guess, fell on the tracks. But the second coroner would say, well, actually, one of the boys' head was probably crushed by the rifle itself. So they changed it from a self-unaliving to a homicide. However, they did not know if the boys were alive or alert when the train went over them. In 2016, a former WWF wrestler, Billy Jack Haynes, would come forward and say he witnessed the murders. He alleged that it was drug-related. The two boys stumbled upon a drug operation, and so they had to be dealt with. He said he has no reason to lie, and he's risking his own life by coming forward. He was hired as a thug, so that's why he was there. He incriminated a politician whose name we don't know. So these two boys stumbled across something they shouldn't have. They were murdered and then left across the tracks. Is it true? A woman would fall to her death off a cliff, and the question still remains, was it an accident or something more sinister? Hello, true crimeers. This is the mysterious death of Lauren Agee. Viewer discretion is advised. Lauren was a 21-year-old college student from Hendersonville, Tennessee. On July 25th, 2015, Lauren and some of her friends would go to an event called Wakefest. The event was being held at Center Hill Lake in Smithsville, Tennessee. By all accounts, Lauren was having a great time. She was having a blast. This is her pictured with friend Chris Stout, who apparently had interest in Lauren, but Lauren did not reciprocate the feelings because she was already happily with another man, a boyfriend. Now, the campsite that Lauren and her friends were at was located on a cliff. One side you had a 90-foot drop, the other side you had a 30-foot drop to the lake. So Lauren's campsite included herself, Chris Stout, her friend Hannah Palmer, and Hannah's boyfriend, Aaron Lilly. A security guard at Wakefest said that he saw Lauren and her three friends leave the bar in that area around 2 a.m. By the time the four of them got back to camp, they were all pretty drunk. On the afternoon of July 26th, the next day, two fishermen who were fishing on the lake found the body of Lauren Agee floating in the lake. Throughout the early morning and afternoon of the 26th, Lauren's mother, Cheri, tried to get a hold of her many times, but she obviously never could. The three friends that Lauren was with never reported her missing, even though when they woke up, she wasn't there, and she never returned to camp all afternoon. And especially more concerning about that fact is Lauren's flip-flops, her wallet, her cell phone, all of her belongings were still at the camp. So why didn't her friends go looking for her or report her missing? The coroner would rule her death accidental. They said she fell off the cliff, landed on rocks, and then rolled into the lake. What is suspicious, however, about that, so she allegedly fell into the lake here, but was found floating over here. Now this would be going against the current. Lauren's mother got a hold of the autopsy report. There was no water in Lauren's lungs, which means she did not drown. The photos showed what looked like a bite mark on one of her breasts, and marks on her neck suggested that she was actually strangled. The detective assigned to her case had never investigated a homicide before. No rape kit was done. They didn't check her for DNA, especially under her fingernails. There were also strange marks on her back, which a private investigator said would be indicative of someone dragging her. Lauren's body and clothing had no tears, had no scrapes, which would be indicative if she was like sliding against brush or a cliffside. They didn't look at the rocks for blood, but it still ruled an accident. A fraternity hazing would go wrong, and no one will say a thing. Hello, true crimerers. This is the story of Tucker Hips. Viewer discretion is advised. Tucker was a 19-year-old who was attending Clemson University in South Carolina. Tucker was also pledging to the beta chapter of Sigma Phi Epsilon. At approximately 5:30 a.m. on September 22, 2014, 3 brothers from Sigma Phi Epsilon and 27 pledges, including Tucker, would go for a morning run. This run would take them across the Highway 93 bridge. Now, allegedly, since Tucker was the pledge class president, he was instructed by the brothers to bring certain food items. He was told to bring 2 gallons of chocolate milk, 30 biscuits, and 30 hash browns from McDonald's. Tucker told them, "I don't have the money for that." So when he arrived to the run, the brothers would punish him for not bringing the items he was supposed to bring. Witnesses would say there was a small altercation somewhere near this bridge. Now, the act of hazing is not tolerated at Clemson University. So now the 3 brothers and the 26 other pledges, they're keeping themselves very tight-lipped. You see, because Tucker, pictured here with his girlfriend, he would go missing after this supposed altercation on the bridge. They started looking for him around 7 o'clock in the morning, but they never reported him missing. One of the brothers wouldn't even call campus security until 1:45 p.m. when he still hadn't been found. And they told them specifically, "We don't want to file a missing persons report." Sadly, at around 3:30 p.m. that afternoon, they would first notice Tucker's blue running shoes sticking out of the water, and the rest of Tucker was submerged. The belief is that the altercation that was witnessed was the brothers forcing Tucker to walk on the very narrow guardrails. Tucker then allegedly slipped, where his arm caught part of the rail, but then he slipped more and fell again. He would then fall head first and smash into the rocks below. The autopsy showed he died of blunt force trauma. Witnesses who drove by said they saw a young man on the bridge, surrounded by 4 or 5 other men giving him military-style commands. But none of the pledges and none of the brothers will come forward to admit anything. The family, his mother, just wants the truth. That's all she's asking for. She said she's forgiven anyone who might have caused this, but no charges have been pressed, and his case is still open. Just beyond the door of this hotel room in Oslo would be one of the most famous unsolved mysteries. Hello, true crimerers. This is the case of Jennifer Fairgate. So this is the Radisson Blu Hotel located in Oslo city center in Norway. And on May 31st, 1995, a woman who spoke both German and English would check into the hotel. And this was approximately at 10:44 p.m. Now, this is the actual check-in card. So the room was booked for 3 nights, and each night cost her 1,845 kroners, or about $222 in US money. She did not give a credit card. She checked in at a super busy time, and she was assigned to room 2805. She would also put the name Lois Fairgate. However, there was no one with her. Some witnesses said they saw a man go into the room with her at least once, but that person has never been identified. During her stay, no one could ever say that she left her room. No one saw it happen. Phone records would show that she tried to contact someone in Belgium but never got a hold of them. On June 2nd, she would call the receptionist desk and ask to extend her stay, which happened. At 8:06 p.m. on June 2nd, she ordered room service. This was her actual meal. Initially, her food was delivered to the person across the hall, but then the mistake was cleared up and she got her food around 8:23 p.m. And that would be the last time anyone ever saw Jennifer Fairgate alive. Over the next couple of days, there were several attempts made by the hotel to reach her because she hadn't made her payments. Apparently, they sent messages through the television, which you can hit a button to acknowledge. And on June 3rd at 7:36 p.m., someone in her room did acknowledge the message. 14 minutes after that message was acknowledged, security went up to her room. They knocked on the door, and then they heard a gunshot. The police are called right away. At 8:04 p.m., security would open the door. The room was dark, and he could see a woman laying on the bed. When police got there, they walked into the room, and the woman was laying dead on the bed with one single gunshot wound. The gun was being held in her hand like this. However, she had no blood on her hand. There was no gunshot residue on her hand. They quickly discovered a second gunshot had to go off because there was a bullet hole through her pillow. She was dressed in these clothes. All of the tags were removed. No sign of robbery as she had a nice watch on her. This is a rendering of the woman. Her name was not Jennifer Fairgate. In fact, she's never been identified. Some think she was a spy. Who was she? Was she murdered? It is still unsolved. A woman found brutally murdered on the side of a road in Los Angeles would not be identified for 46 years. Hello, true crimeers. This is the case of Reet Jurvetson. Viewer discretion is advised. On November 16, 1969, on Mulholland Drive in Los Angeles, California, the body of a young woman was found in some bushes. It appeared that the person who put her there was trying to throw her all the way down into a ravine, but her body got stuck on a large branch. The woman was fully clothed. There were no signs of any kind of sexual assault. These were some of the initial composites that were made of the woman. There was no way of identifying her. She had no wallet. There was nothing on her person that could help figure out who she was. She had been stabbed a staggering 150 times. And these stab wounds were in the neck, the chest, and the torso, with what the coroner believed would be a penknife. Not even a very large knife at all. Her carotid artery was severed. She also had defensive wounds on her hands. So police would release the images on either side of this right away, and no one identified her. The one in the middle was made many years later. This is the exact outfit she was in when she was found. They also ruled out robbery because she had some fairly expensive jewelry on her. So where she was found was only a few miles away from where the Sharon Tate murders happened. And those murders occurred not too long before this one. After police released the composite drawings, some people came forward and said they believed they saw a woman who looked just like that, intermingling with Charles Manson and his crew at Spawn Ranch. One of the people who came forward to say this said the woman identified as someone named Cheri. However, police were never able to actually connect the two. Charles Manson was also asked about her before she was identified and even after she was identified, and he said, no, that wasn't me. So who knows? It would not be until 46 years later in 2015 when a family friend would recognize someone from an unidentified victim's website as that being Reet Jurvetson. So her sister provided a DNA sample and it was a match. They were family members. The body was Reet. Reet Jurvetson was from Montreal, Canada. She had just moved to Los Angeles a few weeks before she was murdered. She did so to apparently meet a man named John or Gene, someone she had a romantic interest in, I guess, from back in Canada, who then moved to Los Angeles himself. These are composite drawings of that man plus that man's roommate, the only two viable suspects at this point. Reet wanted to make a new life for herself. Was she bamboozled by this man? And police are still waiting for these two men to come forward. A 4-year-old girl in Arizona would draw this horrific drawing of her mother's murder. Hello, true crimerers. This is the case of Mary Ann Holmes. Viewer discretion is advised. This story takes place in the little town of Thatcher, Arizona. The date was July 9th, 1995. The 4-year-old daughter of Mary Ann Holmes. She had run across the street, she was bound behind her back, and she was nude. She was running to her neighbor's house to call for help. "Mommy's not waking up," she said. The neighbor, obviously horrified, quickly put some clothes on the little girl, and she would go across the street on her own to look inside the home. Mary Ann Holmes had just done a yard sale that day, so there was a bunch of boxes stacked up behind her door. So the neighbor struggled to push the door open because of all the boxes. But when she finally did, she saw something just out of a nightmare. She saw her friend and neighbor, 29-year-old Mary Ann Holmes, completely nude, and her body was unbelievably brutalized, and she was dead. Mary Ann also had an 18-month-old child who wasn't tied up, who was just crawling around on the bed, right in the vicinity of her dead mother. Now, the town of Thatcher is extremely small, and their police force only consists of about 8 or 9 people. Not the best trained people in the world for a crime scene such as this. Allegedly, they crowded the crime scene, so they might have possibly fudged up some potential evidence. But Mary Ann's clothes were cut off of her body. She had a cord wrapped around her neck, and she also appeared to have been beaten with some sort of object that they thought might have been something like a nightstick. That same object they would come to find out was used to violate her as well. She was also handcuffed, and there was one single fingerprint left on the handcuffs. Outside of her home, they found a size 11 to 12 shoe print. They did find a tiny amount of DNA, but because of poor storage, years and years later, the DNA had been completely degraded. The 4-year-old girl who had run across the street to get help, she would draw this image for the police. Both children were in the room and they witnessed everything, but they weren't able to describe who the man was. They only ever had 3 suspects. One of them they eventually cleared, but one of them definitely stood out. A previous romantic partner of hers, Philip Turley. He was recently arrested in California. He seems likely, but he hasn't been charged yet. He would go missing from a Halloween party and then found dead. Hello, true crimerers. This is another episode of Deadly Halloween. Viewer discretion is advised. This was 17-year-old Kurt Sova, and on October 23rd, 1981, he would attend a Halloween party. This Halloween party was over at a friend's house. Her name was Susan, and allegedly there was about a dozen or so people there. The party took place at a duplex. Now, Kurt didn't tell his parents that he was going to this exact Halloween party, but at some point during the night during this party, Kurt would go missing. This was so unlike Kurt, and so his family began to panic pretty quickly. Kurt's mother got a hold of the person throwing the party, and at first she said, no, there was no party, and definitely Kurt wasn't here. Then when she called back a little bit later, the friend said, okay, I lied, there was a party, yes, he was here, so why lie? Kurt had actually gone there with one of his friends. The friend allegedly said that during the party, Kurt fell ill. So the friend took him outside so he can get some fresh air. It was cold, so the friend went back inside to get Kurt's jacket. And then when the friend came back outside, Kurt was gone. 5 days later, in a ravine that was already searched by family and police, they would find the dead body of Kurt Sova. They found his left shoe wedged in some rocks a few feet away, and his right shoe was missing. He had a few scratches on him, but there was no immediate noticeable cause of death. The coroner couldn't even really determine how he died. Now, where Kurt was found, it was just 500 yards away from the duplex where the party was at. And like I said, they already searched that area. And the coroner would say that he actually died only about a day and a half before he was found. But he was missing for 5 days. A friend of Kurt's named David told his parents that he actually saw Kurt with a friend a couple of days after the party. And he was about to offer Kurt a ride when a white van pulled up to Kurt, and he said, "Franco!" And Kurt and his friend got in the white van, and that was it. This story has not been corroborated. The parents went to the duplex where the party was held, and in the basement they noticed there was a cot that looked like someone had slept in it. So Susan said, the girl who lived at the house, "I don't know, maybe someone was sleeping in my basement." But this death is still unsolved to this day. And there's one more weird thing. In January of 1982, just 3 months after Kurt's murder, a 13-year-old acquaintance of Kurt Sova, his name was Eugene Kivet, he also vanished from the exact same area. And then he was found dead in a ravine, missing his right shoe. His death, also unsolved. What the hell is going on there in Ohio? Was the Zodiac killer, who's now likely been identified as Gary Post, was he responsible for another murder before his string of attacks in Northern California? Hello, true crimeers. It's time for another episode of Deadly Halloween. This is the case of Cheri Jo Bates. Cheri was born on February 4th, 1948 in Omaha, Nebraska. By October of 1966, at age 18, she was living in this Riverside, California home with her family. Cheri worked part-time at Riverside National Bank, and she also attended Riverside City College. On the night of October 30th, 1966, Cheri went to her school's library. It's believed she left her home around 5 p.m. Later that evening, when her father got home, he noticed this exact note pinned to their refrigerator. Witnesses would state they saw Cheri getting to the library around 6:15 that evening. It's confirmed she checked out 3 books. It's kind of hard to tell, but you can see the 3 books sitting on the passenger side seat of her vehicle. Now, the timeline is very disputed here. The library closed at 9 p.m., and there was a witness that said they think they saw her there until the library closed. But most other people who were in the library cannot say that they actually saw her in the library at any point that evening. And a lot of the people who were in the library at the time knew Cheri very well. The only thing that's known for sure is she got there around 6:15, and shortly after she checked out her books, she left the library to put her books in her car. Her car would be found still parked in the library's parking lot. This is a crime scene photo of her exact vehicle. Cheri never returned home that evening. Her father, at home, got very worried. By 5:48 the following morning, he reported his daughter missing. Sadly, the next morning, Halloween morning 1966, Cheri's body would be found lying face down on a gravel path between 2 vacant homes that were purchased by the college. You can see a close-up image of her body online, but this little line right there is her. They found a broken Rolex watch found about 10 feet away from her that did not belong to her, which is that image right there. The autopsy showed she was repeatedly kicked in the head, she had cuts on her faces, and she was stabbed at least twice in the chest. And then her throat, her jugular vein, was sliced. If you want to pause and read this letter, go for it, but it might be hard to read. But this confession letter was sent to the police about a month after her murder. The police and her family also received this handwritten note. The bottom of that note had what looked like a Z as a signature. This is a few years before the Zodiac killings happened up north in California. A possible suspect was a man named Ross Sullivan. He worked at the library, but he was never arrested. The theories this could have been Zodiac's test case before he moved up the San Francisco area and began his spree. Cheri's killer taunted police. We all know Zodiac did the same thing. Riverside police does not see him as the killer, and this case is still unsolved. Blood-curdling screams could be heard echoing down the streets of this neighborhood in Columbia, Montana on February 5th, 1946. Hello, true crimeers. This is the case of Mary Lou Jenkins. In 1946, Mary Lou was a 20-year-old girl living at home with her mother in a quaint little home in a small little town. She would spend her afternoon of February 5th, 1946 at Town Hall, which is a club at Stevens College. One of her closest friends asked if she wanted to stay the night at her house, but Mary Lou said no because she wanted to focus on her studies. Living at the home was just her and her mother. Her father lived out of state at the time because his job had taken him out of state. At 10 p.m. that evening, Mary Lou's mother, Dorothy, she was getting ready to leave the house because she had an overnight nursing job in the same neighborhood. When her mother left, she locked the front door and latched the screen door. Now, Dorothy's nursing job in the neighborhood was at a house just right down the street, and she could still see their family home. They had a little tradition. If anyone came to the house while Mary Lou was alone, Mary Lou was to open up a blind, turn on a light, and then call her mother. At approximately 10:15 that evening, just moments after her mother left, neighbors would hear screams of death echoing out of the Jenkins home. One of the neighbors described it as a terrible scream. No one investigated it. One of the neighbors even said, "We thought it was our rabbits." Different times in 1946, folks. At 6 a.m., Dorothy would walk up to her house. There was a light on, but Mary Lou never called. The mother knocked on the door, but no one came. So the mother, worried, broke a side window and climbed into the house, where she would find the dead body of her 20-year-old daughter. She was bruised and horribly beaten. Her pajama pants were torn and ripped off of her, and there was an electrical cord wrapped around her neck 5 times. This brutal murder sent a shockwave through this normally peaceful town. Police didn't have any viable suspects, and I remind you this was far different times. They rounded up all of the young black people in the neighborhood and questioned all of them, examining all of their faces because allegedly she scratched her assailant. The police was under extreme pressure to solve this case, and into their lap fell this man, Floyd Cochran. A couple weeks after the murder of Mary Lou, Floyd, who was developmentally challenged, had shot and murdered his wife. He fled his home and was found by police as he was trying to end his own life. And they figured, hey, here's a good suspect. They interrogated him for 2 straight nights, and he finally confessed to the murder of Mary Lou. But he had no idea what he was doing. That didn't matter to anyone else. An all-white jury found him guilty, and he was executed just 1 year later. It's now widely believed he did not kill Mary Lou. It's unsolved.